Hey, what's up, guys? Russ Anderson, AndersonSecurityConsulting.com, Anderson Security Consulting on Facebook and Instagram. On Twitter, it's exec_protect. Alternatively, if you want to send a question or a video request, you can do so by emailing me at AndersonSecurityConsulting@gmail.com. So, all those will be linked in the description below. So, let's get straight into the subject matter of this video. So, the word snitch gets used a lot, and I think sometimes people don't understand the word, but they also don't understand the ramifications of labeling someone a snitch. So I'm going to give some definitions of what a snitch is, what an informant is, what a cooperating witness is, that sort of thing, and the different circumstances that would or would not constitute snitching. So let's get straight into it. So first definition, snitch. According to the Urban Dictionary, a snitch is someone who gives up information to the police or feds in order to obtain lenient treatment for themselves. Typically, that's after they themselves have been caught. So if I'm involved in a criminal activity and one of my associates, say I'm a kingpin, and one of my associates gets caught, the feds or the local law enforcement agencies will target them for the purpose of using them to climb up the ladder to get to me. So they'll catch him doing something and be like, look, you can do these 5 years, or you can give Russ up and you don't have to do any time whatsoever. All you have to do is testify against your boy, your close friend that you grew up with, and we'll give you some time off. And that's typically how that will occur. So an informant, so that's typically after the fact. So they'll give information about something that occurred previously. So say, for instance, we are involved in something, a tire heist. We stole a bunch of tires or something of that nature. They say, hey, you know what? We want to know who was in on that tire heist with you. Oh, shoot, that was Russ. Okay, and so that's typically after the fact. That's typically what snitching is doing. They're telling after the fact information. So an informant is usually someone who's embedded in your organization, whether it's a close one, a loved one, a business associate, a criminal associate, or even a close friend or family member who maybe they got caught doing something and they're using that to work off that, and they're paying the police back for not arresting them by doing what they're doing, by telling on you. So they'll give real-time information by either wearing a wire, leaving their cell phone line open, or a myriad of different techniques. Or they'll go have sit-down conversations with the police, as we saw in one of the YSL cases recently. One of the witnesses was just in there just giving all the information, but he's being paid to be a witness, so he's a professional informant. There are people who make up to $75,000, $100,000 a year just to give real-time information about criminal organizations. That's an informant. Now, when you're talking about someone being a cooperating witness, that's someone who has information during trial. They decide to give cooperating. They cooperate with the federal authorities to achieve a goal. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they are snitching on someone. So I'll give you a real example. I know a guy I grew up with who wound up getting a bunch of time. Well, before he got a bunch of time, the police came to him and said, look, because he was fighting everything, he had a good attorney, and they said, look, you put all this stuff in the names of your mother, father, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, all these different people, grandma, grandpa. If you don't cop to all these things we have and fill in the blanks for us, because they didn't have all the blanks for them, we're going to charge your whole family. We're going to bring everybody in. They're all going to get time. Not a lot, but grandma's going to get 5 years. Mom's going to get 5 years. Dad is going to get 5 years. So he decided, okay, you know what? You got me. He didn't tell on any of his criminal associates. He didn't dime anybody out, so he, held strong as far as that goes, as far as the street code goes. But he gave them information about himself. That's not snitching. That's taking and collapsing everything on yourself to free other people, so other people don't have to suffer for your charges. So you're taking everything on yourself, so your family doesn't have to suffer. Again, the way to avoid this: don't get involved in the street life. Don't get involved in the criminal activity in the first place, man. Like this was a good friend of mine, and we were thick as thieves, man. But when him and another good friend of mine decided to go down that particular path, guess what? That's when I had to peel off, because that's a one-way street. So this is the This is a message to young people everywhere. It's a one-way street. That street ends in a dead end, and that dead end ends with one of two things, typically. Prison, graveyard. Those are your two choices. And along the way, you're going to bury and watch a bunch of your friends get a bunch of years and wind up being at a bunch of funerals. The alternative thing is find something else to do. Put that energy that you're thinking about putting into that criminal endeavor into something positive and constructive. So number one, you don't have to look over your shoulder. Number two, you're not generating a bunch of bad karma, because it does come back to you, man. It always does. And I'll give you an example of how karma came back to me, not in a criminal sense, but in a way that I knew starkly this was my fault. I brought this on myself. So when we use the word snitch, we've got to be really, really careful. I'm incredibly hesitant about labeling anyone a snitch. Why? Because what if the information you have is wrong? In a recent incident, kind of an ongoing thing that's going on, a gentleman by the name of Ralo, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this. It's spelled Ralo. He's serving some time. He was a literal drug kingpin. Like, this guy was a kingpin for real. He was a rapper. He was a kingpin who rapped. He wasn't a rapper who wanted to be a drug dealer. He was literally a legit drug lord who also rapped, right? So he wound up getting some time. Then someone came out and said, oh, he was snitching on somebody and told on somebody, this, that, and the other thing. Well, here's what he did. Someone offered to take time and take a charge for him. That's actually very common. And so typically what will happen is one of your associates, so say for instance, I'm in a car and I'm in California, they got that 3 strikes and you're outlaw. I don't know if they still have it. They had it when I was living in California. And there's a gun in the car. Say it's my gun, but I got 2 other guys in the car with me. The other one also has 2 strikes, but the guy in the back, he doesn't have any strikes. So for him, he's in possession of a firearm. That's a felony, but it's a 3rd-degree felony. He might get 1 strike, maybe, if he's unlucky, but odds are he won't get a strike, and the rest of us don't have to worry about doing 30 years for that 3rd strike. So literally, I'd be like, the cops are coming. Man, look, man, if you cop to that gun, I got $50,000 for you. Oh, word? Yeah, 50 grand, man. Just cop to it and say it's yours. If they find it. If they don't find it, don't worry about it. But if they find it, take that charge for me. Okay. That's common, and that's what someone offered to do for him. I don't think it worked out the way he wanted it to, but that's not snitching. That's a business arrangement with someone who's consenting to take a charge for you. That is not the definition of snitching. So people need to stop making these allegations on people, because being labeled a snitch, especially he's in prison now, being labeled a snitch in prison could cost the man his life. You literally could get someone killed. You can get someone hurt. You can ruin someone's reputation, ruin their lives just by labeling them a snitch. So, I made this video to try to educate people about some of the things that go on, because it's a big issue and it could get people in a lot of trouble. Now, alternatively, I will always say, don't get involved in that stuff, man. That buddy of mine who wound up doing all that time, he'll tell you right now, he wishes he'd never done it. Why? With all the drive and ambition this guy's had, and the business know-how and the savvy and the talent he has for business, he's been out of prison for a few years. He's already started a very successful business already, and so he could have turned that energy into something else, but he got caught up in that fast money and the street life and everything else. That wasn't really a temptation for me. I saw it. I saw things that were going on when I was growing up. Some of you might know I grew up in the Bronx. But that wasn't my life, Now, okay, we got into plenty of fights. That's a whole different thing. You don't really have a choice when you're growing up in the Bronx. But as far as the other stuff, it wasn't for me, man. It wasn't for me. Never got into it. But he'll tell you every day he wishes he had made a different choice. The choice that wouldn't have taken approximately half of his adult life. He wound up getting about 30 years. Some of it got commuted, but he did the bulk of that 30 years, man. 20 in the feds, 10 in the state. And so was it worth it? If you ask him, was it worth it? He'll say no. He'll say no. It was fun while he was doing it, but then look at the price he had to pay. It's not just the price he paid, the price his family paid. His loved ones, his family, his children, that he's still struggling to get to know people don't talk about that, the peripheral or the collateral damage that goes on when you get involved in these different things, man. It's not just that. Now, me, I didn't find out he was in prison until possibly he'd been in for 15 years already. I joined the service. I was working. I was living overseas in the Middle East and North Africa for a lot of years. And I would go back and forth between here and there. But, I really wasn't keeping up with what everybody was doing because I knew, from way back then, they were getting involved in that street life. That's what I got to check out. So, again, let's recap. Snitching is if we're both involved in criminal activity and I decide to tell on you to get a lenient sentence. Informants are people that are embedded in your organizations. The old school gangsters, mobsters like Lucky Luciano and those guys, they used to snitch on each other regularly. Not really snitching because they weren't working together, but if you had a business rival, a gang boss, and you couldn't get to the guy, you couldn't touch the guy, a lot of times they'd be like, yo, he's got a warehouse of, back then it was, the speakeasies or the moonshine or the bootleg liquor. He's got a bunch of this, he's got a bunch of that, he's running a brothel, and, the guy might get put away for 3, 5, 10 years. That happened. That was a very common thing. Now, not so much. Now they prefer to handle things themselves. So, it's kind of a, it's kind of a misconception because there was a lot of snitching that went on back then. Nowadays, there's even more snitching because, the time that they're putting on people, the RICO laws and all the rest of these things, a guy could be facing 50, 60 years in prison or just telling that guy, yeah, it was him. He did it. Can I go home now? So again, the whole key to this whole thing is, number one, don't just call people snitches. It's a very dangerous thing to do. Number two, don't get involved in that life in the first place. I mean, I can't stress how important it is, especially for young people. Don't make that decision, man. Don't make that decision. Stay out of it. Stay in school. Do your thing. Find something else to do. Most criminals don't make much money. And when they do, they wind up going back and forth in and out of jail. And then once you're in that system, you're stuck in that system. Who's going to hire you to do a regular job? Very few people. So you're painting yourself into a very, very narrow lane that in most cases you cannot escape. Instead, you can have the whole world in front of you. So anyway, it's your boy Russ. Just wanted to give some quick definitions about what snitching is, and I think people should be more cautious about using the word snitch, because in many cases, that's not an accurate depiction of what they're what they're trying to describe. It's something completely different in most cases. Anyway, it's your boy Russ, AndersonSecurityConsulting.com. I'm out.